Hello everybody and welcome to the President's Day edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. I was really just going to do this bunch of random facts about presidents, but instead I decided to use this as an excuse to not write a column for this week. For like the third week in a row. I'll start writing columns again next week, I promise. Yep, sorry about that. There's just been a bunch of stuff going on that's gotten in the way of writing columns. They will happen, though, and I will do all the reviews I need to do on DeviantArt, and I'll publish the columns on Medium now and all that other stuff. Just follow my Twitter at EphraimJosine1 if you want the full details. Okay, so first off, our first piece of news comes once again from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's been in office for about a month and a half now, and it's like the 8th time I've covered her. Because it's a combination of she just does the most amazing things, and there are so many scandals around her, it's great. Recently, she stopped a multi-million-dollar cronyist deal with the Amazon Corporation, which would involve them getting about $3 million off their tax bill if they were moved to the state of New York. Now, of course, she actually had no say over this, considering she's a congressional representative, but apparently her rhetoric was so strong, she stopped $1 million cronyist deal with the state of New York. I don't know how we're going to handle this. May I remind you, of course, Jeff Bezos is already the richest man in America, and for that matter, paid no federal income tax the past 2 years. Or at least paid any tax on Amazon's profits. That's what I meant, my bad. And therefore, apparently just doesn't have the money to move to New York now. This was clearly an example of the government playing favorites. Do you think they give most startups that same treatment? Of course not. Of course it would raise housing prices excessively for people in New York. Of course there would be all sorts of negatives. But apparently, despite the fact unemployment is already very low, we needed those random 25,000 jobs in the state of New York. Specifically, again, even though, and I find it funny because I know for a fact Louder with Crowder blasted her for this, again, despite the fact that's not even within her power, when they reported last year there were more job openings than there were people unemployed. But apparently Amazon needed to save the day. Jesus! Nothing about this makes any sense. This guy on Twitter by the name of @NotWokiLeaks, great name, summed up the problem correctly, apparently, that I just didn't understand. Customer, I'd like to order 25 pizzas. Can you even order that many pizzas? I mean, I'm sure you could, but has anyone actually ever done that at once? Like, they're not going to a party? I have a $10 off coupon I'd like to use, too. This, of course, is the $3 million tax break that the state of New York is giving Amazon, which already pays basically no taxes. So it looked more like a subsidy than anything else, therefore basically making it them paying you. As in the pizzeria paying the person buying the pizza. All of that's besides the point. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. No, you must pay full menu price. I will not accept your evil coupon. Customer, I'll just take my business elsewhere. Then, wait, wouldn't you just order $10 less in pizza? Like, I doubt the pizza costs 40 cents each. And if it does, by the way, you're kind of a dick for using a $10 off coupon if that's the exact price. But, okay. Cortez, hey boss, I just saved us $10. Can I have a raise? Very clever. Also note, I've decided to actually look over some footage for once. If I accidentally said million at one point, I meant billion the entire time. there's some times where it's kind of hard to tell. My bad. Now let's go back to making fun of Roaming Millennial. More notably, her work at Eve magazine, the conservative women's magazine, which is just as awful as it sounds. Now, if you cannot tell, I am a man, and therefore I don't really care enough to critique many of their atrocious articles. However, their ones about politics are still in my area because I cover politics day in, day out. So screw it, I still have the right to critique them. Now, of course, they're trying to do the whole "we're the real feminists" thing, which is also the same shtick Leela Rose is currently trying to play. And it's not working because Leela Rose is an insane person who blames Sigmund Freud for women being oppressed. I'm not making that up. Of all the people to blame, she picked Sigmund Freud. But, okay, that doesn't make much sense. It should also be noted that the actual paleo-conservatives, people like Faith Goldie, if I can again list a woman, don't want women in their movement. It is absolutely hilarious how wrong these people typically are on everything. At least the paleo-cons are sometimes populist. What do people like Roaming and Leela Rose have? The answer? Fake compassion. Of course, the last time I indulged into the cesspool known as Eve, I covered their atrocious interview with Candace Owens, where Candace Owens blamed Bill Clinton for locking up black people, or was that something else, and then said welfare was a plot by white people to make black people poor, and apparently Democrats signed laws making it illegal for black parents to, or for black families to have fathers or something. I don't know. Everything Candace Owens says is a blur to me now, and none of it ever makes any sense. This brings us to our newest article from Eve. Liberalism versus conservatism. Which one is actually more compassionate? The question that they just sort of made up. Yeah, has anyone actually on the left appealed to compassion of all things? Because I don't see it very often. I see claiming that, yes, you do want to screw over poor people. But that's more just based on the general actions we see from you. But, okay. From the first paragraph, quote, "If you've ever espoused conservative views towards economics, immigration, or healthcare, there's a good chance you've been called cold or heartless. I've been called cold and heartless because I didn't like the MLP episode, The Perfect Pair. It doesn't really mean anything in society. And for that matter, what happened to facts don't care about your feelings? Now apparently you guys have better feelings than us. So what does that make us? The side of facts now? Interesting. And I should point out that in this article she mentions a number of things, including immigration and gun control, which I'm not a prominent supporter of gun control, so I'm not going to address that. However, I find it funny she didn't mention healthcare. No, I don't, actually, because remember when Sean Spicer directly said the American Health Care Act, quote, had heart? But let's look at her section on immigration. Maybe then we'll see some actual arguments. Now, of course, these polls are very weird. For instance, the immigration bullet point is a paragraph below when the section actually starts because Eve is typically formatted by monkeys. For example, immigration is one of political conservatives where the conservative approach is often painted as being cold or uncaring. Yeah. The desire to implement any sort of skill requirement or limit the number of people admitted is portrayed as wanting to turn away the world's poor and hungry in order to satisfy some sense of greed, xenophobia, or perhaps even racism. First off, you do want to turn away the world's poor and hungry. That's what a skill-based system would require in order to actually function. However, the reason, I guess, is debatable. But ask a conservative about why they hold their views towards immigration and they'll paint a very different picture. Yeah, you ask anyone why they believe something, they'll tell you the good version. For God's sake, I know this sounds like an extreme example, and to be honest, it is. But research of defenses use the Nuremberg trial if you don't believe me. Most of those defenses were, I did it, I'm proud I did it, and I'm right that I did it. I don't expect you to have some sort of unbelievably high morality where you wouldn't lie to me to make you support, but to make me support your position. I don't trust you enough. When the left advocates for amnesty on behalf of illegal immigrants, it seems not much thought is given to the legal immigrants who wait in line, go through the strict vetting process, extensive paperwork, and pay the substantial fees associated with the U.S. immigration process. That's a bad argument. Would you have said, back when we were talking about repealing prohibition, that, well, that's unfair to the people who followed the laws? No, it was completely unjust when they had to follow them in the first place. And may I remind you, roaming has supported deregulation of basically everything except immigration, so how is that fair to the people who follow the regulations? Nothing about this argument has ever made any sense. And of course, they decided to put in giant quotes that part, because of course they do. And what about the people who are hurt by the large-scale, low-skilled immigration? You mean the people who, even an unskilled immigrant creates 1.2 jobs for native workers, ma'am. Do they not deserve any empathy? Although it is not popular to discuss the economic impact of open borders policy, most notably a bigger economy leading to more jobs, a higher GDP, higher wages, all that. Oh, higher purchasing power as well. The truth is that large numbers of low-skilled workers from other countries hurt the most vulnerable members of America's economy by causing more competition for their jobs and increasing housing prices. First off, you didn't care about housing prices during the Amazon deal. Don't pretend like you care about them now. Second off, you can't compete with someone who can't speak your language. Congratulations, you admit to being bad at your job. Anyway, this post is atrocious, so I'm Ephrom and good night.